with this protest at the Westminster Bridge. It actually shut down the bridge temporarily and they blockaded, and then there were skirmishes with the police. And it really wasn't reported on mainstream media, but you'll get all your kind of video, effective video, on social media. That's how I found out about it. Former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville is with us. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Johnny. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Mike, it's a pleasure, and I'm really trying to shed light on this because the police really finally confronted what looked like real skirmishes in a way that they haven't done in previous weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been on here before, you know, and we've discussed how the police are not dealing with things on a level playing field. So if you're a Just Stop Oil or pro-Palestine march, you get treated a lot different from being a Millwall fan or somebody who's an anti-vaxxer or whatever else. And like you say, we do see the consequences here that people have been able to literally do what they want, firing flares near the police, climbing buildings near the police. And like a child, I suppose, if you've let a child do what it wants for a long time, if you start cracking down and say you're not going to do that, then they won't like it. But it's something must be done, because one of the things that struck me is, having spoken to my Jewish friends, is how much in fear they are, how they don't like to be out and about, how children aren't wearing their school uniforms and like, and it is just got beyond the pale. You know, something must be done about these protests. But of course, banning them takes a lot of effort. The legislation is very tight, and it involves both the Commissioner and the Home Secretary agreeing that they've got to be banned. So I just think that's very unlikely as well.
It's unlikely because no one set a precedent, but Macron did in France. These protests are not going on in Paris.
Yeah, as ever. I mean, we've been seen as the weak link in the chain, and it's wonderful to live in a democracy that we live in, that we have the right to protest. Unfortunately, every so often it just goes too far, doesn't it? And this has gone too far, and I don't think that they are pro-Palestinian marches. They are anti-Jewish marches. That's what they amount to. And there's also, so there's a sort of racial element in all this. And so I think that should be taken into account. Maybe the government could look at introducing some emergency legislation. They're forever trying to get laws through to deal with public order matters like the Just Stop Oil and the like. So here we have a different threat, but something must be done. I mean, we can, I suppose, stand being disrupted and the traffic being annoyingly stopped for an hour or so, but when it comes to whole parts of London's community, the Jewish people being living in fear, that simply isn't good enough, and this must be cracked down on.
And it wasn't just at Westminster Bridge. There was a bit of a flash mob going on in Camden as well, as they marched on McDonald's. Now, any independent observer at this would laugh at the idea. McDonald's is an American business with a Scottish name. It's not kosher. It's just a regular place where probably some of the people that protested would have been former and future potential customers of McDonald's. Can I ask you that these blockades of Westminster Bridge and Camden, amongst others around London, were actually legal? Were they pre-notified? Did the cops know about it?
Not to my knowledge, no. And of course, it's always been an offence to block the highway, to obstruct the highway. The police there was a case at court where a man was found not guilty because he'd blocked a sort of arms trading a convention, and he pleaded that this was his right to protest. But what the police do is they try and foretell what the court will do, because the police only need reasonable grounds to believe somebody's committed an offence. So the moment you sit down in the middle of the road, the police have got reasonable grounds and can arrest you. Let the courts decide whether you were innocent or guilty. But the facts are the road is now moving because you've been shifted. But I think it goes back to the point that we've allowed this to go on. And if you look at the pictures you're showing, of course, all the officers are wearing soft hats. So that that just shows you the sort of style of policing that's involved, that what people wear on their heads immediately tells you that the protesters have been given a free hand. If that was Millwall fans protesting about, you know, needing a new manager or anti-vaxxers, the police officers would be probably wearing hard helmets and riot gear, but they're not here, and that just tells the crowd that they're able to get away with more than they could do.
This is deeply concerning because, as you're saying, the weekend protests were effectively illegal. There was no notice given to the cops. They preempted it by being there, which begs the question, when there are organised protests coming and when 300,000 people turn up across the London bridges and properly blockade it, and they shut down traffic, and firebombs are set off or fireworks are set off and they're thrown at the cops and they start fighting, is it too late for effective policing at future legal events?
No, they can. Well, they can change the tactics whenever they want.
Are they able to? I'm asking. You know, do we have confidence in our cops to do that? We haven't seen it so far.
No, I'm with you altogether, Johnny. You know, I have said, you know, I reiterate that certain groups get a free pass, and it is not good enough, and this has got to somehow change. With these, even the legal protests, there was even talk there, though, of, oh, we'll charge them money, like we do with football clubs, which, of course, is a nonsense, because it's easy to say to Arsenal, Millwall, Bolton Wanderers, whoever, you owe us this amount of money, because they're an entity, they exist. Who do you charge money? Who's organising these events? When you look into it, there's several groups involved, so one will just pass on to the other, and it's all a bit nebulous, to be honest. But I agree with you. The police have got to change. The tactics have got to be harder, and they've got to sort this out, because we can't have people living in fear. That's just not good enough in London.
It's true that Jewish children are changing their school uniform. They're frightened about having something like represents a Star of David on their badge, or that they're on their school bags, because they haven't got eyes in the back of their heads. We are seeing, you know, tooled up security outside synagogues. You look both ways, not just because of the traffic, but because you're walking into a suburban synagogue just in case there should be a protest around your corner. We can't, you know, there is a democracy, but we also have in our democracy and our freedom-orientated society, we should have an instinct to protect it so that the next generation can enjoy it as well.
No, I'm absolutely with you. I went to give a community talk in a synagogue on forensic science, just to a friend, and I was appalled. This is a year ago, that there was a security guard on a place of worship. You know, it absolutely disgusting. And what is it? Obviously now that's even stricter, because the security's got to be even tougher. And there has to be this element that, yes, people have a right to protest, but also people have a right not to live in fear. And those two things have got to be balanced to have an effective democracy. And we're looking to the police now to sort this out. And as I say, you can see by the soft hats there that it's a soft touch. That's what it tells you. It's got to be changed. They can bring in mutual aid. They brought in other police forces. But the other thing to consider in all this, Johnny, as well, there's been something like 28,000 police shifts. That's, you know, an officer being on duty for 8 hours. 28,000 of those have been used on these protests. Every single one of those shifts is somebody not on patrol in your area, another area, looking for robbers, burglars, thieves, rapists, keeping the place safe. This is the impact that these protests are having on in London as well. So it's not just that central London part. It sucks in resources from the sort of areas that really do need a police officer on patrol or on the beat, protecting the public, and that's been drawn away as well.
So Mark from Norwich is listening to our interview and has texted us this. Johnny, we must draft in the army and also form a national guard similar to the United States. The protesters need to be detained, writes Mark. The government has let too many people with non-British loyalties into the country, and this is extremely serious, because if we do have to go to war with another country, the elements of that country currently here in the UK will rebel from within. We could then have a similar situation to the 7th of October in the UK. A chilling text. Mike, your reaction to that?
Well, these whole marches just show the fracture in society.
Yes.
So politicians have been pretending that we're all in it together. You know, there's a bomb in Manchester, and everybody stands on a stage reading a poem out of some nonsense. And what it's shown is a real fracture, that there are groups who just simply do not want to live in the sort of democracy that we have, that do hate certain other groups, that we're not all in this together at all. And hopefully this awfulness, there's got to be some good comes out of it, that people can see these fractures in our society, and somehow they've got to be fixed before it goes completely out of control.
The army, what do you think of that as a solution, alongside the overstretched cops who aren't in the suburbs protecting us from burglaries and rapists, etc.? Bring the army in.
Well, it would be a very difficult choice. The police will resist that as much as they can. I mean, I was a Royal Military Policeman in Northern Ireland, so I have been a soldier, you know, deployed on civilian patrol duties. But it'd be the first time in this country for many, 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 many years. And so they'll resist it. And to be honest, if you look at the army now could fit into Wembley Stadium. So there's not going to be many soldiers available when you take away all their operational commitments as well. So, you know, it's all right saying bring in the army, but what army?
Well, a few years ago, there were a couple of days of patrols in central London. I watched army officers with weapons, proper frontline weapons, literally patrolling like they were cops around London. And obviously, I know that there's a shoot to kill with army officers, isn't there? It would change the mood of the protesters, wouldn't it?
Would, I mean, I just don't think that would happen in this country. In the mainland UK, right. You'll see it in Ulster, Northern Ireland, but I don't think you'll see it here. What needs to happen, though, is the tactics need to change. We need to see more people arrested. We need to see proper intelligence and the ringleaders arrested before they ever get there in the first place. And we need an absolute crackdown on crimes against the Jewish community as well, to make sure that everybody knows it's completely unacceptable.
Mike Neville, former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector, thank you very much for your time.